Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. So I decided to do a archetypal reading. You can look at this as because what's coming up, it kind of does demonstrate it's a lot of the energies that are showing up at the moment, but in many ways they can apply to different times as well. But when I do the reading, you'll probably realize that some of the things are definitely key things that are coming up for a lot of us. They're coming up for the collective in society. Okay, so today we're going to look at three key archetypes that are, well, actually we'll look at a fourth archetype from another deck. And that's actually the original Lightworker. But we're going to look at three archetypes that are showing up at the moment, particularly in the shadow element, okay? And that is the bully archetype, so the bully in its shadow, the shadow state, the hermit in its shadow state, and what we call the femme fatale, or it can be classed as the black widow or the seductress. Excuse me. Excuse me. So for this reading, I'm going to talk about the card as the black widow, right? So first of all, how does the bully archetype show up in the collective, right? So first of all, we'll look at what happens when the bully archetype shows up in its shadow element in the collective field. So obviously the bully is all about control, getting their own way. But behind the bully is fear, right? Is when we look at what drives control, what makes us all want to control areas of our life, is because we don't trust. We have fear, or we are in a state of lack, right? And if you think about when a parent tries to control the child, it's not often because they're trying to be horrible, it's because there's a root level fear. There's awful a fear, and it goes very base level. If you think about the root chakra, right? And we think about our primal fears as human beings. So obviously we all know in this group that the reality is that we are all spiritual beings having a human existence. Because we are having a human existence and we're very much embedded in the human aspects, we are very much driven by fear. If you look at the fight or flight response, and if you look at how many actions or inactions we take in a day due to stress and fear. And if you think about stress and if you think about anxiety, when you break it down, it's just fear. It's just this is a fear of something, right? And when we are in any way anxious or stressed, it's because we don't feel in control. We're not fear and stress and the need to control others, or the need to try and push and get other people to do certain things the way that you want it to be done, or when you try and control other people, no matter if it's coming from a negative perspective, there's a fear. So when we look at the collective, and if we look at society and dominance of power and power structures, if we look at financial structures, and we look at society in a whole it's for a lot of people are very naive about the financial system. They don't understand how the banking system and the financial system works, so they don't realize there's an element of control with that, about how much the way that a lot of things happen and do the control the system. Now people are starting to wake up to that now, because we're seeing elements of the push for the digital system, push and trying to make it more things like I'm trying to watch what I see here so that I don't get shadow banned again, or I get pulled down. But we all know of certain countries and nations where there's a lot of dictatorship and extreme control, and a lot of people are so shocked because many of us in the West are starting to see that in our own country. And why does that happen? Well, that happens because someone is in fear that the masses, so if there's more of us than them, it's like the bully in the playground, right? A bully bullies others, and even bullies, one person bullies a lot of people when they are scared of something. So they are scared that they're going to get bullied, they're going to get control, they're going to lose what makes them feel safe and secure, right? And some people, it's money. Some people, it's status. Some people, it's actually having some sort of security, like home and, physical items, whether that is gold or homes or a car, you know. Even though we are all similar at a human level, that we all do have this survival, aspect within us. If you look at, there's some person could have no home and be homeless, but they could still be quite a content person if they have a deep sense of peace, or if there's certain aspects that are not important to them. But someone else could have a lot of things. They could have financial security, they could have a paid home, they could have a paid car, but they're still driven off fear, right? They're constantly doing things from a state of fear, right? But when we try and control other people, or we try and force other people to do certain things, there's a drive from that fear. And of course, there can be a drive, motivating factors that don't care about anybody else. There's also sometimes when, again, an example I used, when we are parent, or if you care about somebody, or you care about a group of people, and you're trying to help them and they're not listening, there can be an element that you're trying to, because your own fear is taking over, right? And that's completely natural. Now, one of the cards I've also took out is Rebecca Campbell's card, and it represents, I can't even pronounce how you pronounce that. Is it Mintakan? But it's representing the original Lightworkers, right? And it represents our longing for home, that belonging. It's like an aspect, if you think about the God aspect within us all, right? That purity and that aspect of light. And some people might look at it from a different perspective. They may look at it like heaven, going back to heaven, or going back to nirvana. It's about going back to that place where you feel you belong, not to a place that is chaotic and doesn't feel like home. And many light workers at the moment are really, really struggling because they are constantly stepping up, and things are shifting energetically. You're constantly releasing and moving up, and up leveling. And through that process, there's a lot of, you're getting how can I say, you're letting go of old baggage, you're letting go of old trauma, you're getting letting go of old ideas, but you're also moving in many ways further and further and further away, maybe from other people that you feel connected with. But you're also, or many people are finding more and more their tribe, and part of that, they're finding their way to where they're supposed to be. But it's like everyone, sometimes we're lost, and that process of feeling lost and in a journey, it's like your spiritual journey. It's, if you think about the hero's journey, right? And the road less travelled, there's certain parts of our spiritual journey that can feel very lonely, that can feel very unique, and like as if nobody else is going through that experience. And we all have to find our own path, and there's parts of that journey that can be really challenging, right? That, particularly those parts where you feel you are mostly on your own, and particularly those round about us, and most light workers have at some point experienced this, where they don't feel as if they resonate with most of the people around about them or anyone around about them. Right? Now, I know particularly, I started my spiritual journey and studying healing everything 30 years ago, and I was lucky on one hand, my family were open about me going for certain healing modalities and certain things, but there was lots of ideas that I had, like many light workers have, and things I just knew, or experiences that I had, that they thought I was classed as the witch. It was a joke in the house that I was the witch, right? Now, I came from a very strong Catholic background, so there were some things that was tongue in cheek, but there was other things that were regarded as really bad, right? Now, if we look at history and we look at, if you believe in past lives, so you believe in things to do with how we also pass down ancestral stuff, right? And so many things about lifetimes. There is so much trauma in relation to the light worker's journey, the healer's journey, and also the truth, the light warrior, the truth seeker, right? And there's, in society, if we look at when people have tried to, for example, speak the truth, or people have tried to help others. If you look at like witches being burned at the stake, the healers when they were classed as witches, I mean, I know some people, describe themselves as a witch, but if we look at people who were healers, women who just tried to help, their neighbours, and they had certain gifts, or they used certain, herbs and whatever, and they were burned at the stake. There's an example, right? So there's a lot of fear at the moment of not just what's generally going on in the collective of control structures, but light workers are feeling old winds and fears in relation to, because particularly if it's been highlighted, it's always went on in so many levels, but it's been highlighted over the last few years that as more people have spoke out about things that they didn't feel aligned, or it was not part of their moral values or the spiritual values or what they felt was the truth. They've been really ostracized from family. I know there's people in this group who've been through horrendous experiences with family members, with relationships, with their friends, even within the spiritual community. And they have been victim of the bully, even within their own other people trying to bully them. But also, we can, by trying also, as we've tried to put our opinion across, we might not be aware of it. Sometimes we can bring a bit of that bullying energy through, because we're trying to control. We want our family to wake up. We're trying to control people who wake up. So there's an element of that. And the reality is that in archetypes and in the shadow element, there's the light, of course, and the shadow elements within us all. And we all have different areas that we have great strength, and there's other areas that we need to work on. That's just life. This card is reminding us that although the bully archetype is really showing up in society, right, and we're getting really pushed at the moment, and it's almost like in some ways they're trying to push, it depends on maybe, what area of society, what country you live in, what your circumstances are, but there's certainly a level of push, and that's going to keep going, that push, push, push. And when bullies push, right, what happens? Sometimes bullies create other bullies, but also bullies create circumstances where there is a backlash, right? Now you can choose to stand back and react back in a firm perspective, in a peaceful perspective, in a strong stance when you come from the heart, or we can be constantly triggered and actually then react from our own fear. Now, and it's a fine line, and it's really hard for us all, where there's that fine line where we stand up for ourselves, we stand up to the bullies, right, of society. When we want to create a news, we all are deeply passionate about unfairness, we're all concerned that what has been created. We know there is a new earth coming, but the process of that, and and many people that have children, and I know I don't have children, but I've got nieces and nephews, and you're looking at them, and you want this beautiful new one for them. You don't want this craziness that's going on. So many people. Hi, Adette. It's nice to see you too. I never saw you, Adette. Lovely to see you too. Thank you. So one of the biggest things is that a lot of people also are feeling worn out. They're feeling worn out because they feel as if they've been on a long battle trying to wake people up, right? And some people are facing a lot of bullying in their life, bullying by other things, right? So it's important that we understand that it's so easy for us to fall into that. The shadow element can come up as the bully within us, right? But it's also about looking at what areas do we bully ourselves? Where do we really hard on ourselves? Where are we beating ourselves down? I can beat myself, and be really hard on myself. And many empaths and sensitives who are light workers are very hard on themselves because they tend to be more acutely aware. They're more aware of energy. They're aware of what's going on. And even if they do something and they realize it's slightly off, right, then they're really hard on themselves, right? But it's about getting back to the heart. We have to, as much as possible, and we all need to be reminded, I need to be reminded, right? We need to be reminded that if we are light workers, it's an ongoing journey. It's not, it's not about, we've not arrived at the destination. It's a journey. It is a journey. And in that journey, there's all little bumps on the way, but you have to be really compassionate towards yourself. And we all have to remember that none of us are perfect and that it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay for the shadow element to come up. It's okay for, to have certain vulnerabilities that are not our strengths, but also for us to recognise our power, that we are here and we're making a difference, we're making an impact, and we may long to go back home. We may long for peace. We may long for that new earth or nirvana or enlightenment. We may long just to get out of this planet. But the reality was we're here for a purpose, and everybody in this group and my followers will be here. And I do believe that everybody on the planet has a purpose. And I think we've also got to remember, I do think the light work term sometimes kind of almost as if it's us and them, which is not true. And I think a lot of people, just because you're a therapist or a healer or a coach or, or some sort of teacher, a yoga teacher, a meditation teacher, that's not what defines a light worker, right? And of course, there's some people are more healers and spiritual, work and work with energy, which is slightly different. And, everybody's different and what their gifts is. But it's so important that we let go of the bully within ourselves, as in when we've been really hard on ourselves, or the bully that we see past the bullying, because when society and structures try to bully us, they want us to react. They want us to react from a sense of disempowerment. When we act like the bully, we're disempowered. When we're in our sovereignty, we're not the bully. We're in a state of peace and love and compassion, right? So we can stand up for what we think is, what we believe, and what we think is a truth, but we have to do it from that place of strength. Now, the next card in the shadow was the Hermit. So this is the Hermit up the right way, but it was down the neck in the shadow element. So we all know what the Hermit means in some ways. So I'm just going to go over aspects of the Hermit. So obviously, the Hermit in its positive aspect is about seeking solitude and silence, going inward, right? And retrieving from the world, right? And many times on the spiritual path, the light worker's path, there has to be a certain element of the hermit, particularly, if you end up being a spiritual teacher or somebody that is, part of your path is really spending a lot of solitude and really doing a lot of spiritual work, which requires a certain amount of externally, getting away from the external world. That's why, daily meditation is important, getting into stillness, getting away from the distractions is so, so vital to connect, right? But the shadow element of that is that you withdraw from society because of fear or because of negative judgment of others. You refuse to help those in need. Now, we do have a lot of people who even in the light worker community have felt paralyzed in fear, right? Frozen by what has been going on, right? A lot of people shell-shocked also when they've actually realised what awakening means. Awakening doesn't just mean that you're awakening to your spiritual gifts, the light aspect and the God aspect within you, but the shadow element of all the other horrendous things that are in the different levels of layers of things that's going on in society and the spiritual world and all the darker things that have been there but we've not seen, right? Now, that is enough for anyone want to withdraw and shut down, right? But we've also seen in relation to the level of, for example, censorship over the last few years and abuse because of the bully, the general public in their own fear. And when people are in fear and stress, I've talked about that already, they react from the survival response. So we're seeing people reacting out of character, people reacting in very extreme patterns, people making knee-jerk reaction and making decisions out of the survival response instead of using their wisdom, instead of going inwards, right? And what does that? That causes catastrophe when people always react. Now, if you look at the survival response and the stress response, there's some things that require us to take quick action, right? That saves their life. But there's lots of things in life that we don't have to make decisions over right away. And there's the decisions where you have the opportunity to access your spiritual wisdom. But even in the survival response, even though fear overrides intuition, if you have a really deep, good spiritual connection and soul connection, that connection can override extremely dangerous and harmful situations. I know that that's happened to me. I know I've got one particular friend his own circumstances. He saved his own life in a circumstance that was very extreme medically, where the nurses and doctors were putting something on him, which would appear to save his life, but he was given spiritual guidance not to allow them to do that because it would literally have killed him. Right. Now, when it's so important as light workers, we get the balance. We get the balance of knowing when it's time to do the spiritual work, the deep work, and to step away. But it's also important to know when you're just hiding and you're letting your fear, you're letting your worry about what other people think, your fear of not being part of the tribe that you used to be, being fear about what your family will think, what your relatives will think, your partner, your friend. It's so easy to self-sabotage by worrying what other people think rather than going what your soul wants you to do and what is part of your mission. Believe me, sometimes just taking that little first step and doing a little bit can actually give you so much strength and power. I know at the beginning of this pandemic, I had strong opinions about a few things. Now, I know that in my groups, I might come across as someone has certain strong opinions, but in other ways, a lot of people that have known me for years would say I'm one of the most amicable. I don't make a fuss, tend to go on with, I never really have issues with people. I'm not one of these people that has lots of issues with people. Right? I don't tend to get triggered with people in that respect. I don't know if it's because I come from the oldest of the big family, right? So I go on with most people, and I I don't like ever to cause a lot of, someone a lot of discomfort. But at a soul level and at a core level, there were so many things that just, it was like, you know how, and you'll all experience it in different ways, but you know when you're intent and something that is so morally important to you, feel at a core level, a soul level, something is so off. That's the way I felt about so many things. And I know that so many light workers experienced the same, and it's it was extremely painful because at a core level it felt so wrong. And so many things going on at a mass level that it was so disturbing that it was challenging. And I spoke out. Now I've not made, I've done it in different ways, and sometimes I've done it and at what people would class as more diplomatic or came from it from a different angle. We all have to choose how we do it. And sometimes we're guided how we do things and why we do certain things, why we share certain things, why we don't. There's all sorts of reasons why some of us share certain things. I know there is some things I share because I know there is certain of my audience that's something that they would relate to and they're going to understand more or find that more acceptable. Whereas, for example, even and if you understand this from a business perspective, this might help you see what I'm talking about. So, for example, if I look at my stress management, my stress coach training mailing list, right? There is some people that are quite spiritual in that, but it's mostly for many years, many of the people that were on that mailing list was contractors that used to contract me out. And it could include like HR managers, NHS, charities, right? Education, as well as other therapists and coaches and healers, right? But some of that audience was not what you would class as very awakened, right? Now, I had another site, but I don't really do much about it. And it was my empath and sensitive. Now, I attracted probably a lot more healers that are a wee bit evolved, but also still people that were in the beginning of their journey. The Spiritual Marketing Club, I tend to attract a lot of marketers, to be honest, a lot of business coaches who are always just looking for tips or freebies. I also have a lot on that mailing list. I do have a lot of people that are more awakened, right? So what I'm going to put out on the spiritual, there's certain things that I would know there's going to go, is going to feel more aligned and understood and taken the right way by the Spiritual Marketing Club. I'm not saying all of those people because they're not at that level of their spiritual journey. They may not get what I'm trying to achieve, or they may not get the message or find it's just too much for them. But there's things I started over the last year, and maybe even 2 years, being a wee bit more with my stress management. But there were some things I knew I would lose a certain amount of audience. But there's certain things I didn't also write because I knew it's not that I was not being authentic. It was just, I know they wouldn't understand the message and they weren't ready for that, right? So you don't have to jump in there and reveal all. You don't have to tell everybody everything that you think. It's not about that. If you've got all these ideas and your family that they're only in base one and you're in 100, right? It's about you stepping up each day a little bit more into what you're here to do. It's about you owning more and more what you're here to do, because along that path, it's not a race. It's not a race, but you're not here to be a hermit. Nobody's here to be a hermit. You are all, as I said the other day, all have beautiful, powerful gifts, and it's important that you step in your power. But it's also really important to be honest with yourself when you are actually hiding and you're not standing up when you maybe should be standing up for certain things, or that you should be doing something that your soul is telling you that this is what's needed. We are a pivotal point where we need to start creating a new earth, and we need to start creating projects and things for society and doing things. And it can be the smallest thing. It can be the smallest thing of starting to do a little wee gardening project, helping your neighbour. It can be going to your local community, acting as a volunteer or a support worker. It doesn't have to be just about your healing business, right? But even putting yourself forward and starting to write some blogs or getting as your business and starting to be a little bit more brave, it's so important. Because every time you take a little step forward where you've came from fear. You're not reacting, right? You feel stronger and you become more in your sovereign power. And what do we need at the moment? We don't need just people. We need people to step in the sovereign power from a state of peace, a state of strength, not from a state of fear, right? And baby steps can help you do that. Now, if we looked at the femme fatale, that was upright. So that means that, you know, we'll look at the light and the shadow. So we're going to look at it from the Black Widow perspective, and there's a reason why we're going to look at it from the Black Widow perspective, right? So the femme fatale card represents, now I'll read it out and then I'll explain what it represents in different things in business. So the light attributes highlights the erotic energy of the feminine, opens your heart when your dependency is rejected, right? So the femme fatale has essential energy, is an energy of all sorts of things where, I mean, the words in this card is about the seductress, right? But if you look at it also about attraction and things it can do. Now, if you think about the feminine energy can often do things, and it may be classing it as such seductress, but let's look at this in its high vibration. It's like the feminine energy can persuade and do things and have make an impact often in ways in a more roundabout way than sometimes the masculine energy can. Obviously, the masculine energy is needed for structure, strength, sovereignty, but the feminine energy kind of knows how to bend around things, right? And when there is pushback, when there is dominance, how to move that. Now, if we look at the dark aspect and if we look at the Black Widow, when there's someone who's had darkness, pain, suffering, and uses, seduces, or distracts or manipulates someone or something, then we've got the negative aspect. And if you think about the shadow aspects, the inappropriate use of sensuality, attachment to money and power. Now, part of the light worker's role is, I'm not saying abdicating your money, no, that's not what I mean. But if when we truly want to live a spiritual path, it's about our surrendering ourselves to the spiritual path and letting go of that over attachment and over fear of physical things, too much attachment to material things. And this is because as I talked about in the first card, one of the biggest aspects of the bully energy is that over attachment to the physical even life, the physical structure, the soul. The bully at that point is not spiritually connected. It's spiritually disconnected. It's disconnected from the soul. When you're in your sovereignty, when you're in your power, you have a strong spiritual connection, and lots of things don't have that level of importance that you are driven by that, right? Because when we are driven by material things instead of spiritual things, we can make really irrational decisions, right? We can make immature decisions and don't have we're not coming from a place of spiritual wisdom and spiritual discernment. So it's important that we recognize. Now, if you look at the Black Widow and the femme fatale, the seductress, that's very much another energy that's playing out in the collective. Now, if we look at even the digital system that they're going to try and push in many ways they're going to try and seduce us by saying, well, this is so one of the options they could be saying is, which a lot of us think that they probably will do, is pull the financial system down and then give you and say, but there's nothing we can do about this scenario, but guess what, this will solve your problems. And today we live in a society that people are seduced every single day with the material aspect. Now, I'm not saying that material things are bad, but when we make choices just from a material perspective and it doesn't have a spiritual backbone, right, we have a problem. right? And most of the things that are happening at the moment are trying to break the spiritual backbone, right? But the thing is, if we all come together and we start coming together to create and look forward and find ways to work together, as light workers, and not, be against each other, but actually work together to see how we can be socially led, how we can be more spiritually led, how we can be more intuitive led, and work together and help each other forward. Because the more we come together, right, and the more that we work together, we have a stronger spiritual backbone, right? The more that we're divided, it's easy to break us down. The more that we can come together, we are stronger together, and we actually feed off each other's power, because everybody has different skills. Everybody has different gifts. They have different insight, and just like, in this group we have people from different countries, different areas, different ages, different ideas, different tools, that's what it's all about, right? And it's about, the more that we understand that, then we all get going back home, but we might not need to go back home, because we're creating home here, because we're creating a beautiful life here. So that's what it's all about. It's about, remembering what the light worker role is supposed to be. The light worker's role is to share the light and to work as light workers together. I see so much separation and so much on a really big scale. We all have, we all do things, and none of us are perfect. But what I mean is that the one of the things that I still find really hard to understand is there's always only a small amount that tend to support each other and work together. Most people are in the survival response. They're coming from their lower chakras, so they're approaching their business and their mission more from a me perspective, a survival perspective, and they're just focusing on like the survival response. Well, I need to get this done. I need to get this done. Oh, I just need to focus. And also, it's all about me, what I can get out of it, instead of working together and growing and supporting together, which actually helps everybody grow and actually helps you build your business in the long term more stronger, because it's relationships and in connections that helps you move forward in life. It's not isolation. It's not just thinking about what you can do. And a lot of you will do that for your clients. You will probably give them the world. But the reality is, we also can we have to learn from each other. I am so fortunate to, my journey led me to explore working with so many different people, right? And I am so blessed. Now, there were some challenges with that, and that was part of my learning curve. If I hadn't experienced a lot of the challenges that I had, if I hadn't worked with as many types of different healing modalities, and trained with so many different teachers, and had so many different types of experiences, I wouldn't be here where I was now, and able to do some of the work that I wasn't here to do. And you're the same, right? But we have to work together, right? Now, if any of you are struggling with anything that I've been talking about, shadow elements, or you're stuck with your purpose, I still do. I had an offer, and it was supposed to end today. I'm going to extend it for another week, right? And what that means is you'll be able to book, because I don't think I've got many slots over the next 2 weeks. But say that you'd be able to book up to a month, but you still would get it at the price that it is for this week, right? And there's so I offer what they're called magical child sessions, which it works like a healing, and we work with aspects of archetypes, and what I call your magical child. It's like you're in a magician, but from a magical, pure perspective, right? It's the essence of you. And it's a great way to bring forth a lot of key elements of you that you are maybe hiding or suppressing. I also do kind of soul purpose. I'll put a link underneath that, and there is also one for I'll leave also the offer open for the marketing strategy that was still me last week. Okay, have a good week, everybody. Now, and remember, you know, step in just one day at a time. Get out of being the hermit. Of course, if you need to be more of a hermit and you need to go inward and do the spiritual work, you do that. But don't hide. Don't use your spiritual work to hide. And also recognise where you're trying to control situations, right? Where you're not coming from the heart, where you're coming from fear or triggers. Okay. Have a wonderful Sunday, everyone. Bye bye.